Hello again. I am Brittany Devereaux.
I'm Jon Devereaux.
And you are back with another episode of It's a Wonderful Life.
She almost messed it up again.
I don't know why I'm having such a hard time with the title of the podcast, but I'm going to get it together. Anywho, this is episode 3. And the title of this episode is There's No Place Like Home. Click, click, glass slippers. So we're going to be talking about pretty much getting home for the first time, which will be our kind of end all as far as being admitted to the hospital, as we wouldn't know at that time. But coming home after the PICU, which was episode 2, we talked about us being in the PICU and JJ having his gut surgery. Mm-hmm. So now we have a kid with SBS. Yep. And I think that's probably the one difference, obviously, from being home the first time from the NICU. You have a small child, just needing it to grow. Now we're home with a new set of issues. Him being a short gut kid, having, half his small intestines removed. So it's a little bit of, again, another adjustment to being home.
Yeah, so this time it was a lot different than the first time around, just because we had a more serious condition this time to kind of deal with. But we came home with a lot less equipment than we did the first time. So this time we didn't come home with oxygen. We didn't come home with the pulse ox. Yeah, so I mean that was a lot lighter right there already.
Pretty much bringing him home this time, we did have some things that we still had to do that were different from the first time. He was on some very serious, like a steroid is what he was on, and it needed to be weaned off because it's not good for him to be on it a long, extended amount of time, but he had to be for obvious reasons. So we had the option of weaning him in the hospital or going home. We chose going home.
Right.
We'll do it ourselves.
Exactly. So like in addition to like that steroid that he was on, there was a number of other like meds that we were having to give him. So that was a huge adjustment this time with just keeping up with all of his different medications. So I believe at one point he had about 9 or 10 meds that he was getting at different times. So he would get his omeprazole in the morning, his Imodium in the morning. He would get his vitamins in the afternoon, and these are all in liquid form, so syringes. So for us, we had to draw them up like every single day, and these are his morning meds, these are his afternoon meds, his evening meds, and things like that. So
it's like Grandpa JJ with the medicine for the days of the week, except we had them in liquid form.
Yeah, so I mean that was just a huge incentive for us to make sure that we're getting organized on top of his feeding schedule as well, which was still like every 4.5 hours he had to eat via his feeding tube.
Yeah, so a lot of us getting organized and getting our day-to-day together so that we would not miss anything, because all these things were vital that he really needed. And Dad always kind of spearheads, when it comes to those charts and lists and things. Just let Dad go ahead and handle it and tell me what I need to draw up, and we're good.
But what made it interesting, because I mean, he came home in August. I believe it was like the second week of August, and then I believe it was like a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks before I had to go back to work. So luckily I was blessed to be able to be home, in the hospital, as we talked about in the previous episode, while he was going through all of the stuff with his surgeries. But now it was time for me to kind of go back to work, and Mom started to pick up the slack again, which is like a recurring theme.
In the beginning, yes.
Yeah.
So now it was, first I was stay-at-home hospital mom. I guess you could say stay-at-hospital mom. Now I'm stay-at-home mom. And so it was just JJ and I. Like I said, he was, we always said, in the midst of all these things that JJ's been through, he was always a happy baby for the most part, smiling and laughing. And, so that made it, of course, a whole lot, a little bit easier, I guess, not a whole lot, a little bit easier. But me and him, being home together and, not able to necessarily really do things. I really can't leave him unattended, and especially just fear of whatever to keep my eyes on him, at all times. So that's probably more so the more nerve-wracking thing. He did come home with a Broviac, which was used for the TPN. So the TPN is given to the children when they're not able to consume, the food with the certain nutrients and things that they need. So that TPN is what they're on. A lot of kids with JJ's condition are on it for life, are on it for years. And, unfortunately, the longer you're on it, the more damage it does to your body. So we were very blessed and fortunate to go home not needing TPN. We were told that he probably would, and he did not. My baby said, no, he don't need it. So we went home without the TPN, but we still had to have the Broviac in just in case anything was to happen.
Yeah, so they didn't want to just take it out.
Because it's very extensive to put it in.
Yeah. So they decided, like, hey, if you guys go home and you don't use it, then we can go ahead and remove it.
Yeah, so it was connected to like a heart valve somewhere. So everything that had to be done with it had to be done very, gentle and carefully and correct. So we did have a nurse in the beginning, our first one that came in. She would come in the morning and she would kind of show me what to do. And then once, felt more comfortable, then, I didn't need her anymore. But she would show us, we had to use the alcohol wipes to clean it. It had to be flushed because he's not using it. So the line's not being used, it needs to be flushed. But depending on what you use to flush it or the wrong way, it could like clog an artery in the, or like, it was very, intimidating. But then, just like anything else, once you got it down packed, you felt a lot more comfortable. So we did that for a while. It could not be wet. So JJ did not get he couldn't go in the bathtub at all, really. We had to do more like sponge baths, and it was not every day, every couple days.
There was a covering that we would have to use when giving him the baths and stuff.
So applying that, so there's no air gap underneath I remember that, I forgot what it was called, putting it over it. There could not be any bubbles in there because the air bubbles could prevent things. I mean, it was crazy.
Now, I will say that I don't think I ever did anything with the Broviac.
Yeah. That was probably one of the
that was probably the most stressful because, we're in a lot of Facebook groups online with kids who get those infections in the Broviac, and since it is connected straight to the vein in the heart, it can spread very easily. So that's why it's such a strenuous job to make sure that you keep that area clean at all times.
Yeah.
So like Brittany said, we were blessed to be able to not have to use it, but it was a little hassle kind of keeping it clean. But eventually we were able to kind of get that removed. Yeah.
So when that time came, we had an outpatient surgery. So this was his first surgery outside of his major surgeries from being admitted. So they said it was outpatient. When you just hear a hospital appointment or surgery, eyes rolling, all of that, because we're just not ready for it. So I remember that day. It was nerve-wracking. I remember JJ was in good spirits. I do remember that.
Well, he should have been because he slept good, but I
Watching
remember
cartoons.
Us having to get up at like 4 in the morning because it was in Peoria. So we had to make that hour and a half drive. And it was like a 6 a.m. appointment. I don't know why it was scheduled so early. But we had to drive up to Peoria, and luckily it was a pretty quick procedure.
Yeah.
And the whole ride up there, I'm just praying that, nothing goes wrong.
Please let it be outpatient.
Yeah. I'm just praying that everything goes smoothly, and, it actually did. So.
Yeah, so we were able to come home, and he got that out. So that was pretty much the end of that. So we were happy to get, it's kind of like he's making progress. We're done with this. As meds are being weaned off, we're done with this. Things that we can cross off of our list that, make you feel really good. So with me being stay-at-home mom with him as well, we had a lot of appointments in the beginning. So he had to go see the eye doctor often. So with preemies a lot too, they can develop something with their eyes where the pupils aren't fully developed or something like that. So they have to go see, the optometrist pretty often to make sure there's nothing else, going on. So,
and not to cut you off, but since we were living in Macomb, which is a very small town, a lot of small towns, they don't have all of the necessary resources needed, especially for kids who have specialized needs. So we would have to always drive up to Peoria for the eye doctor. We have frequent appointments with his surgeon.
Yeah,
and
so that was packing up the car, me and JJ, getting up the road and just filling John in as we went and letting him know what was going on. So that was always nerve-wracking too. You want a good report, or and for the most part he did. So that made those drives there and back a little bit easier. So we got a referral from, we can't remember which doctor it was, but somebody mentioned we had never heard about this. With JJ being in the hospital. At this point, he's in critical condition. They're trying to save his life. They're not worried about anything else outside of that. This produced the flat head.
Yeah, JJ had a very flat head that we noticed like when we got out of the hospital. But
Piece
as
of paper.
I'll have a picture up that kind of shows like the severity of
Man.
it. But as Brittany mentioned, yeah, when you're in the hospital and with the condition that JJ was in, the amount of stuff that he was hooked up to, you can't always sit the kid up or rotate him from side to side. So he was in the bed 24 hours, and some of those days he was sedated because of surgery. So they weren't really too focused on that. You know, there's more life-threatening things here that needs the attention. So luckily there was one nurse though at the hospital who was very proactive. I remember, you know, as JJ started to feel a lot better, she would make sure that physical therapy was coming in and making him sit in the seat. I always remember
King
her
JJ,
saying,
remember?
yeah.
That was his little throne. They call him King JJ.
But the nurse said she didn't want him to have frog legs. That's the one thing that I remember.
What that mean?
But yeah, so she was really on it. But once again, that was the least of their worries.
Yeah.
So eventually, when we got out, luckily we got that recommendation to see a specialist about, you know, trying to help form his head.
Because we just thought, you know, I just assumed that it would kind of, you know, inflate back up to, you know, around here, that it wouldn't stay like that, you know. But, you know, a little to our surprise, you know, it would not. So if we didn't act on it when we did, I mean, you know, there's a certain time span you have to do the helmet process for the child, or it will be, you know, of no good. And so the skull is only soft for a certain amount of time where it can be formed. And then after that time, you know, what you're left with is what you have. So we made it just in time. I mean, the whole helmet process, getting it, was at least 2 months. So from us starting until actually getting it, so that, you know, if we would have waited even more, that's less time that he would have had with the helmet. So
so you did like a lot of those initial appointments with them going up to Peoria, and they had to take a scan of JJ's head, and I'll have the picture up of him with his little mesh.
Yeah, his little stocking.
His little stocking.
He was not happy. If anybody knows JJ still to this day, he doesn't like to be bothered by certain people, and I think he always gets that feeling from a hospital setting. So, you know, when she put that on, it's, you know, it's a compression type of thing, so, you know, like a little turtleneck almost, and he was not feeling that. So, you know, to kind of see him in that, it was, you know, me being emotional in there from the whole thing of not wanting, you know, as we talked about, you know, the reason for the helmet, you know, we thought that the helmet would be for ignorance, you know, that for a child that has some type of mental condition, or some type of like head, you know, brain condition,
or prone to seizures and things like. Yeah, because I was completely ignorant on it as well. Like, I mean, I just didn't see too many people in it growing up.
Right.
And, you know, the few kids that I did see wearing a helmet, it was because they had either something wrong or
some type of disability or something.
Yeah.
So, and that was not the case. It's, you know, just to help the head be formed. Like, that's what it's for. So I think we, you know, stated before, you know, that it's something that we, you know, you don't want your child to have to go through, because he's been through a lot already.
When we first got the recommendation for him to wear the helmet, of course you want to do it because you want him to have his head develop the way that it's supposed to be. But I think, you know, JJ didn't care. He don't care if people looking at him. But like for us as the parents, I know it's just like, you know, he's already a small baby because of his preemie status, and it's like you just don't want people coming up to you, and that was
looking,
it. Yeah,
you know.
and kind of singling your kid out. So that was like my initial fear, you know, that, you know, I just didn't want that unwanted attention, you know, whenever we would be out and about. But eventually we got to the point when we were wearing the helmet, or when he was wearing the helmet, that I was looking forward to, you know, people coming up just to kind of educate them. Because just as I was ignorant, you said you were ignorant as well about, you know, the actual need for those helmets, I kind of saw it as like a teaching opportunity.
Definitely. And so when we got the helmet, you know, she has a little booklet and she shows you different patterns that you can get. And there wasn't anything that really stood out that I wanted on the helmet. I didn't want it plain because it was just white and then, you know, just looked orthopedic looking. But I think, like John said too, you know, being frugal people, you know, it cost more money, and the helmet was already, I think, a decent amount. So John looked into decorating
Yeah.
or what you could do with the helmet, because I believe she mentioned something like that. So we're like,
As soon as we knew we were going to get the helmet and they said like it could be painted, the first thing that I wanted to do was have my god brother. I wanted him to kind of spray paint it because he was an artist and do some custom designs. But as I started looking to it a little bit further, they had like these little decals that you could just order. Bling Your Band is what I think it's called. So just in case anybody out there is getting ready to go on their helmet journey, Bling Your Band. Bling Your Band. I'll look it up and I'll have it on there in post. But that's one of the things that we decided, and we found like this really cool superhero theme because we always said JJ is like the little hero, and of course I like any type of Marvel, DC, and things like that. So we decided to go that route. So when all the decals came in, I think it was only like 2 or 3 days he had like the plain white helmet. So
and then Mama went to work.
Yeah.
And the crafter in me. So got it painted, put the decals on, had his little name on there. Then we have like a funny saying or something. It was something about it being flat. Just fixing my flat.
Was that on his? I know I seen it on a bunch of other ones.
I thought it was on his too.
Oh,
maybe. We should have brought it down here to have as a demonstration. We still have it.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'll get it eventually.
Okay. So but yeah, so we decorated it all up and it was pretty cool looking. So now now of course it's definitely going to draw some attention because people are looking at it because JJ is so freaking adorable. Looking at this little kid with his helmet on here, like, oh my gosh, you can't help but to say something. And the way JJ had a lot of hair, and a lot of it kind of grew at the top. So with his helmet on now, the top of it was open. And so now he had this little tuft of hair that was growing out of the helmet. Just made him even cuter, and it made it memorable.
So I mean, he was cute, and the helmet was doing a good job, but we did not like it. Just because he had to wear it 23 hours a day, and the only time we can take it off was for cleaning. Yeah. So he would have it off for an hour. We would normally do it sometime in the evening, and you have to, with the spray alcohol, clean it and wipe it down.
Yeah.
And I mean,
that thing was funky.
Yeah, because I mean, like, if he's just in it all day and he's sweating, moving around, so all that's just kind of trapped in there. Yeah, so
it was funky.
So we had that, and just having that helmet brought upon like a bunch of other, I don't want to say like necessary problems, but
with the helmet.
Yeah, a lot of difficulties, such as like his sleeping situation.
Yeah, that changed. JJ's always pretty much slept in his crib. I think that started because of the hospital, so we never really had that problem. But now he has this on. He can no longer lay in his crib laying flat. It was just not going to work. So we had to kind of take shifts, and the couch became
he would
our
sleep
new
on his boppy and on the couch, so he didn't like laying flat. And so he would have his boppy that would kind of raise him up a little bit. And we eventually because he didn't want to go to sleep by himself either.
No,
so we would kind of rotate, just sleeping out in the living room, and those were some
having them propped up. Yeah, that was interesting. And then some other things with the helmet. The way it's fitted to his head, so it's made out of a certain material that can be shaved, kind of like to fit. So later on as he's wearing it, it's it's starting to shift because we have to go in periodically as his head is fitting to the helmet. It has to be adjusted. So it started rubbing his ear a lot. So I remember that it was ear was like really, really red. It was starting to shift like more to one side. So we had to go in for that, get that resized, because it was, then he's mad because it's on his ear and he's messing with his ear and scratching at it and stuff. So like that, of course, was horrible as well. So we had to keep getting it fitted, until it was time to we made it to the end.
Yeah, so he had it from October till March. So he had it for a total of 5 months. So normally, like with the helmet, it goes from anywhere from 3 to 6 months. So as you can see, we have a guest joining us. Somebody woke up from their nap.
Yeah. JJ, can you say hi?
Wave hi. JJ, what are you looking at? He's looking at my car down there.
My car.
JJ.
Say hi. Say hi.
JJ, wave hi. Anyways.
It's not happening.
So he's too focused on his car. So eventually, we got to that point where it was time for the helmet to come off. They said if he keeps wearing it, it might make some improvements, but any improvements would be marginal at best. So they gave us the option, and we said, let's just get rid of this thing.
Yeah.
And
enough.
to kind of, they give you like a little certificate that says like you graduated from your helmet.
Yeah.
So we took his little certificate that we went to Build-A-Bear to get him.
Post the video of that.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, right.
No. So we got to go to Build-A-Bear and we made a little superhero themed bear, and we eventually put the helmet on the bear. Just fixing my flat. Also, it does say it. And then
I thought it said that. So show it. Listen, just fixing my flat and all his little characters. It turned out really cool.
And we had eventually, we did put a G tube in the little bear, but we probably needed it.
Right.
As a little spare.
Need that back, fam. Need that back.
So
remember that helmet, buddy? You remember that? JJ. You remember that? What's that? Spider-Man. Yeah.
So that was our helmet journey, and like looking back on it, it wasn't as bad, but
when you're in the trenches, it's like anything else. Yeah. It was rough.
Especially those nights, sleeping out on the couch and stuff like that for him, just because he didn't want to be sleeping alone. The helmet journey, like I said, that's one that we had, one of our many journeys, and you know, coming home from the hospital for any type of extended stay, it takes a lot of adapting.
Yeah.
So one of the main misconceptions about, like, you know, when you leave the hospital, everything's fine and dandy. Now you can just sit back and enjoy your kid. But in reality, that's where, you know, you as the parents, you got to step it up, because we had to go out and seek out services for OT, occupational therapy. We had to find speech therapy, feeding therapy, physical therapy, and just another number of other resources, nursing. And in the future episodes, we're going to have an entire episode dedicated to finding nursing, a whole episode dedicated to feeding therapy, a whole episode dedicated to physical therapy and occupational therapy, and the importance of these services for kids who spent a lot of time in the hospital. You just trying to steal the show, huh, JJ?
Silly boy.
So,
and about his G-tube, we'll have some things talking about, because that deserves an episode in itself.
That might actually be the next one. Okay. Just looking at his entire history of the G-tube and, like, you know, the purpose of it, and how we were able to adapt, because as Brittany talked about earlier, one of the things that we had to learn how to do from leaving the hospital was adapt. JJ had a very strict, like, feeding schedule, so we had to work things around his feeding schedule as well. And even as Brittany talked about, like, the car trips, so while he's eating, we had to find out how to rig his feeding tube up. So a lot of adapting that we had to do coming home and getting out of the hospital. And since I don't think he's going to let us do any more recording, I think that's going to wrap it up for episode 3 of It's a Wonderful Life. And stay tuned for the next episode.
Episode 4. Can you say bye-bye?
Wait, bye-bye.
Hey, bye-bye.
Wait, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Say see you next time.
See, now you're just getting too much, Mom. Close enough. All right, thank you guys for watching.
Thank you guys so much.